Hi, thanks for tuning in. So, title of this is Blue Mandela Effect Blue Bananas. So, there are these Cavendish bananas, and of course, the storyline as it goes are these are endangered bananas. So, the reason they haven't heard about these type of bananas is that they're very quote unquote rare and endangered. So these endangered bananas, um, just like these blue dolphins that were endangered, or there's even pink dolphins that were very rare, but then they're in the lakes, right? So these are blue bananas. That now can grow in North America in more temperate climates. It doesn't have to be so hot to have these blue bananas, and they taste like vanilla ice cream. You can't make this stuff up. Well, actually, somebody is, because now there's blue bananas. So these blue bananas that now you can grow if you're in the Northeast United States, for many of the states, as long as you're not below 20 degrees Fahrenheit, for most of the year, you could grow these all year round and have delicious bananas that taste like vanilla ice cream. So instead of going out and adding vanilla to your banana shake, you could just put a vanilla blue banana in. The skin of it's blue. Pretty cool. And the article that I read encouraged everybody to start planting these in their backyard so they don't go extinct. So enjoy these new blue bananas, which I say is pretty interesting. The other thing that I saw recently that's definitely a Mandela effect as well is there's these flies. I believe it was a fly, and they have scorpion tails now. So it's basically like a flying scorpion. You could Google it. It's like almost like an ant, but it's not an ant. It said a fly, but it has a scorpion tail. It looks exactly like a scorpion tail, which is really creepy. And it freaked me out as soon as I saw it. I said, "What?" This fly with the scorpion tail is supposedly not harmful to humans and only uses its scorpion tail to sting other insects. Hopefully this doesn't progress into anything else. As soon as I saw it, I started thinking about Revelation, and with the scorpions that, like, these fly of the in the book of Revelation, of flying in the apocalypse, these like locusts that would fly and have faces like humans and scorpion tails. So I was like, hope that's not the way it's Mandela effect evolving into, but that was pretty weird. So I just had to make a video about blue bananas and flies with scorpion tails. Very interesting. You can't make this stuff up. And one of the things, I have a friend, and hi if you're watching. I have friends all over. I have a friend in South Africa, and we were chatting, and mentioned my Mandela Effect videos, and she watched a couple, and she doesn't get it. She's like, which is fine. I don't criticize anybody. She said that it's so bad that people misremember so many things, because she knew people that were a pallbearer, and at Mandela's funeral when he died, he definitely didn't die in jail, which I understand. What people who don't understand the Mandela effect, what the one thing I can relate is that it's like, let's say let's say that and here's one that maybe hopefully nothing happens. Let's say that school buses were always yellow. I mean, you rode in them when you were a child, and they were always yellow. And then you wake up one morning and you go downstairs and you see a blue school bus go by, and you go, and then you talk to, you don't think anything of it. You're like, oh, that's weird. And then like a week later, you see another blue school bus, but you don't see any yellow ones. And then all of a sudden, they're all blue. And then people around you always say, yeah, there've always been blue school buses. There was never a yellow school bus. And then you go, wait a second. And then you look up that phrase, ride in the back of the yellow bus, and it says ride in the back of the blue bus. And then you're going, wait a second, I remember all school buses being yellow. And then there's other people that all of a sudden at the same time say, what happened to these school buses? They were all yellow before, and now they're all blue. And so that subset of people that remember yellow school buses are what you call, quote unquote, Mandela Effect individuals, because they have the memory of yellow school buses, but yet everyone else around them say that no, they've always been blue school buses. And historically, they say you must be misremembering, because all school buses have always been blue, and I could prove it to you. Let's look in a history book and you'll see blue school buses. So, and then you go crazy about it a little bit and you start researching it, and you start finding a couple, just to prove it to yourself you're not crazy, a couple of pictures of yellow school buses on the internet or in some book somewhere, but it's like related through like a movie or something. They had a skit, and then in the background you see a yellow school bus, and you're like, wait, I'm not crazy. I knew that there were yellow school buses. So what's going on? So that, in essence, is what the Mandela Effect is. Now, you can't, and we're in a 3D reality. So trying to explain 5 and 60 there are not too many thought concepts and words that relate in how to explain something in 5D or 6D into 3D. So I went into this in another video, and I thought very succinctly explained 5-dimensional reality versus 3-dimensional reality. And one of the ways, as I mentioned before, that you can have an example of 5-dimensional reality is by having a something like the Mandela Effect, and something that would you would see causality within the universe. So two different things would be they would be what's the word I want to say? They would be entangled. So if you could see quantum entanglement in real time, that's an example of 5-dimensional reality. Why is that? That would be a 5-dimensional example of reality, because you'd have one particle here, and one particle could be at the other side of the universe. But for purposes of this demonstration, using my hands, you would see it'd be a 5th dimension, because you would see these two particles. If you put one spin on one, you would see the same spin on the other one, even though they were further distance, apart, but still in a quantifiable way, that you would notice that these two particles were related, and they're separated, and time and space doesn't seem to matter to them. They have the same spin because they were quantum entangled, and now they're separate. So being that they're separate but yet still affecting each other in outside of linear time, in real time, would correlate to the fact that they're more higher dimensional related. So they're higher dimensional 5D, this example of what a 5-dimensional and above, 5th dimensional, what that would be an example, just to explain that. So when you see if you were enabling more of a higher dimensional consciousness, like 4th dimensional, 5th dimensional, higher dimensional consciousness, you would be able to perceive Mandela effects within your environment, where people with a lower 3rd dimensional consciousness would not be able to perceive these realities, because they literally cannot perceive them. They cannot see them because they do not have these higher dimensional faculties, which have nothing to do with the sensory organs for the most part. It has to do more with frequency and vibration, and how you're able to conceptualize how these things interlink. And I believe that for a lot of people who were searching for the truth and finding, interlinked and deeper levels to reality, and say, oh, this has to do with this and this has to do with that. Now you're actually going and understanding more, and you're seeing how things are connected. All of a sudden it's like, boom, and then you're seeing more and more things. So not to make anybody feel bad, if you're not seeing, Mandela effects, that's fine. And there's nothing wrong with you. And the people who are seeing Mandela effects, I don't believe there's anything, wrong with them either. And Moneybags 73, who I value his videos, so good job there. What I'm saying, and what he said was very succinctly, he said that people's filters, reality filters, might be broken, so that's how they're able to perceive these things, these Mandela effects, versus people who don't see them, because they have their reality filters filtering out. Like you're saying, for instance, you're saying, oh yeah, blue bananas, that totally makes sense. Blue bananas, they've been around forever, but they're rare, and they're Cavendish bananas, so they're only one place. And the reason that I didn't hear about these delicious blue bananas that taste like ice cream, that I could literally be growing in my backyard, the reason I never heard of it is just because they're super rare, but they've been around for a super long time, and I'm just totally ignorant of fauna and different fruit and vegetables, I guess. Like, that's where you're supposed to tote the line. That's what you're supposed to say, and that would be normal. And the people who are more normal and conforming to the herd mentality are certainly on board with saying that they're just false memories. And I recently, in Moneybags 73, commented on it in, I thought, hilarious fashion. Not making the other gentleman feel bad, but, there's a couple people out there that were just saying, that were kind of Mandela Effect community, but they were saying that, oh, they're just misremembered. you know, it'd be interesting if one person had the same, had a quote unquote, I'm doing a lot of quotes tonight, misremembering. But when you have 100,000 people all saying the dash was in the middle of a Kit Kat and where to go, randomly all commenting at the same time, that's something to be reckoned with. Now, certainly, you could have a psychological case for saying, "Oh yeah, and suggestibility." I understand, but then we have exceptional people out there with exceptional memories that, let's say, in the photographic realm, that remember this and this and this and this and this, and you get a couple of those people together and separately, and you talk to them, and they all came up with the same things in general, then you'll know, that something's definitely going on. So I have mentioned many of my theories in the past videos, but to recap, for those just tuning in right now, thank you for stopping by, as it were, as if we were on a freeway and you pulled off on an exit for a minute, that there are now blue bananas that taste like vanilla ice cream. Yummy, yummy. Can't wait to get my taste buds around one of those. Sounds delicious. There's so many fruit. It seems to go in cycles almost. Like we'll have some fruit Mandela effects, and then we'll have like insect Mandela effects, and then we'll have some amphibian Mandela effects, and it'll go to birds, and then it'll go, almost like it goes up the evolutionary chain, and then it goes to people, and then all of a sudden there's a effect in the body. For instance, the big one was the heart being moved from the left side of the body to the middle of your chest, and then certainly the holes in the skull was something that freaked me out, because I know things. I mean, I'm in the world, right? So at least part of me is, right? So, I know that I didn't have holes. There's now a notch here. There's a notch here. There was a notch here. There's 8 of them. Notch here. Very strange. So, and if you look at the anatomy now, where those are nerves that come through, and they kind of snake out through your, underneath your skin. So now you have nerves there. We just had nerves underneath the skin on our face before, but now we have nerves. And if you slice the head apart and you look at the cross section on the top of the skull, there are now holes there, and through the base of the skull, there are holes where nerve ganglias are coming through, which are great. Makes sense. Like, totally. Like, why wouldn't we have that? Great idea. It definitely makes sense. I read a neat, and I'm just free-forming ideas. I read a great, interesting book, science fiction book. It was called The Long Earth. Maybe you read it. Anyway, in this long Earth, there was an Earth, and then there was another Earth, and then another Earth, and another Earth, and another Earth, and you could actually quantum jump from one Earth to another Earth, and had slight variation as you went, down a vibrational scale. There'd be other Earths. On those other Earths, they would get stranger and stranger, as you went down. The ones closest to you, in this science fiction book, the ones closest to you were very similar, just certain things were different. As you went further down the vibrational scale, there would be different Earths. And the interesting part was that they had the Earths that were close together here, for instance, there was like, let's say 20 Earths that were all linked. Then they were able to quantum jump from one to the other relatively easily. They discovered a way to do that. And when they did, they went to further out Earths and used their resources and plundered those ones to bring those resources back to the other ones. And there were certain Earths that everybody was just kind of residing on, and then the other ones they kind of emptied out to use for the resources. Very interesting book, and made me certainly relate that to the Mandela effect in a way, trying to relate that to multidimensional thought of how other dimensional things can happen. Where is our solar system located? The outermost edge of the Sagittarius arm, or we located the opposite end of the galaxy. Okay, I did address this in a couple of the videos. Now I think I had 40 or 80 videos, and thanks for posing that question. We were on, actually I have it written down because the Orion Spur, we were in the Sagittarius arm. So if you look at the stellar, if you look at the stellar map of our galaxy, as it were, and if we were still in the same galaxy, and I'm saying if you look at that, and you look at where we are now versus where we are, you would see that we're actually closer to the center of the galaxy, which is purported to be a black hole, one of the largest black holes, of course, in the universe, which we're centering around, right? So if you look at us being in a vibrational frequency, as our vibrational frequency would rise up, we would be, how do I put it? We would be, as you rise up in vibrational frequency, time and space are interrelated. So as we rise up in higher frequency vibrationalness, we would gravitate towards the center of the black hole more, which would make sense. So in that viewpoint, from the calculations that I did do, we would have been, I did the math before, we went from before 100,000 years into the future. I think that was the math that I was trying to relate it to. I was looking at the star map, and actually, because I do remember where we were pretty much down to the light year where we were before and where we would seem to be now, although now we keep kind of moving around a bit. Using that analogy and where we are before and where we are now, it seemed, if you were gonna look at that, what they, and I talked about this before, they found, and you haven't heard about this, I heard about it for a few days and then it disappeared. They found another spiral galaxy close to us, exactly the same as our spiral galaxy, like with the same, like near us. And you people were talking about it, and then that was gone. You didn't hear about it, but that other spiral galaxy had a very similar look to it and everything, and that was close to us. Like it was like a mirror image of our Milky Way galaxy that was close to us. Not as close as the Andromeda galaxy, but it was close. And that other one we could have came from. Two astronomers, let's see what say, scientists Carl Sagan and Neil deGrasse Tyson, who I've spoken to personally, believe that we're in a Sagittarius arm. I didn't read the last part. If you want to repeat the last part, I'll finish reading what you were saying. I've spoken to Neil deGrasse Tyson. I've actually spoken personally to a lot of, I believe we may have moved closer to the center now. Correct. I've spoken to many physicists, not as a talking about the Mandela effect, but talking about other things. Yeah, I was talking to Neil deGrasse Tyson for about 10 minutes about dark matter. We had a nice conversation. Interesting, the ratio, another Mandela effect, just going to mention it, about dark matter is that dark matter was, we were looking at it, it was 40% of the universe's matter is dark matter. Then I see how the ratios change. Dark matter is now 99% of the universe is dark matter. Yes. If you look it up now, you'll see it says 96%, but they'll say the other 3% is gas, which I don't count, of regular matter. So we're basically 1% of the universe is matter. So if you look at us, you know, and the article, there's an article said that maybe, you know, we're in a zoo, and 99% of all realities would be normal reality. We could be the 1% of reality that's actually quantum shifted. So we're actually in the 1%. We're in the zoo, right? So we're the zoo animals, and 99% of all space, time, and matter and everything else we can't see. There's dark matter now. So that would be, if you were going to have, you know, a zoo, you would put 1% of it as towards the zoo, right? And the rest of it would be, you know, the aliens or whatever. We're referring to them as aliens, but they'd be 99% of all matter and energy and everything in the universe would be normal, and we'd be the 1% that was weird. So we're only seeing 1% of all space, time, and everything. Everything that we perceive at this point is only 1%, which is pretty mind-blowing. That's almost as mind-blowing as the, makes sense, because they say atom is 99.999% empty space. Well, right. So, and that's actually a wrong 99.9999 empty space. And the other, the 0.000, what you're saying, 1%, they can't find it, right? So, wrap your head around that one, my friend. So you're saying it's 99.999 empty space, but the other 0.00001%, it's unquantifiable. You can't find the matter, is what you're saying, that 1% is matter, right? But you can't find the matter due to, you know, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. If you go to find that, if it's like with light, light's a wave, but then when you measure it, it's a you know, it's a wave, but yet it's a you know, particle. So, you know, a photon. Now you're measuring, now it's a photon, now it's a wave, now it's a photon, now it's a wave, now it's a particle, right? So you can't measure it. You can't measure anything. You can't measure it. How would that number change if we found planets full of creatures or people? Wouldn't that be more matter? It's both. Dark Wolf's Den. Hi, Dark Wolf's Den. It's both. You can't, it's unquantifiable. You can't, there is no matter. There matter from our point, yeah, sure, I'm hitting the wall behind me. I could feel it. Michio Kaku has an interesting video about that, we're not feeling like this is touching my skin, right? My finger, this. My finger's touching my skin. I'm actually not touching anything. I'm not touching anything. There's a magnetic field that's a micron thick that I'm actually feeling the magnetic field. So in essence, we've never touched anything. If something touched something else, they would actually mesh together. So the quantum magnetic field repels. And when you sit down, you're not actually sitting on anything. There's a layer of micron thick of magnetic field that you're actually always hovering above. So in our reality, you've never touched anything. You're just touching a magnetic field that's interacting with another magnetic field, sending a signal to your brain saying that you've actually touched something. Matter is an artificial perceptual sensory construct, a hologram, a holodeck. Correct. So I was circling around to that. So that's how come you can have quantum entangled particles. You can't have quantum entangled particles if you weren't on some holodeck. How could you have a particle on one side of the universe? I feel like that Picard meme. How could you have one particle on one side and another side? Doesn't make sense. And shift in timelines. I'm actually not a fan of the whole, like I was saying before, the long Earth and the shifting timelines. I'm not a fan. If it was more of a holographic reality, as I mentioned before, with a computer virus worm, then that makes more sense. So, shifting consciousness. Well, right. I think it's when you go to the 5-dimensional realm, it's more complicated than, and a lot of it's more easy. So these are more complicated and easier things than a lot of us are struggling with. If you just think about your reality as a hologram in a nice way, it kind of a lot of more things put together. What's your theory as to the Mandela Effect? Michael Green asks. I mentioned, a lot of theories. One theory could be that, like I mentioned this one before, and I thought I was very cognizant of a lot of different theories and drew them all together, is that we're in a like a simulated reality, but yet there's a nested simulated reality, like a Makroshenko brain. Like think of it like a Russian doll. So you have a Russian doll here, and outside is another Russian doll, and outside that is another Russian doll, and another Russian doll, and another Russian doll. So over here, we're in a lower state of reality. As Elon Musk says, that the odds are that we'd be in a lower state of reality versus the higher one, right? So let's go with the numbers that make the most sense. Let's talk about that. And I talked about this in another video for everybody missed it. So if you're in a base, and I'm saying base reality as in there's higher levels of reality. So for instance, on our level, not the garbage level, but we're in a lower level, that there's other levels above it. So over here they have, advanced computers, and they've invented, quantum computers that do simulations. So we'd be inside, let's say, one of those computers that do simulations. Yet above that one is another reality that they have a quantum computer making a simulation, and this one's being simulated, and they're simulating something, and we're below that. So you can have a nested, reality. So in a nested reality, you would have OAIs, right? Well, you would have your laws. So for instance, if you look at reality as a layer of let's say that you have now gravity. Now gravity has to be a certain way, and light has to be a certain way, and all the things that add up to our reality are just a slice, right? So you can't, it doesn't make sense to have that slice, like the odds are so astronomical, right? It just doesn't add up. And there's all these other things about it. Now, what people, minimize all this, like if you had, for instance, you turn a light switch for your computer simulation, from the people who are in the simulation, they would see that light switch turn on, and it would seem to be like the Big Bang. So you would have the Big Bang, and then all of a sudden, all the from that hard drive being turned on, it would seem like it all expanded, and it came into the universe, and then we had, it was a million degrees in heat, and then it would all coalesce, and then we get towards our present time, and all those things happened, and now we would be at zero time. We're now at our time. But from scientists' point of view, with those telescopes, and they're looking back, and they're looking towards the beginning of time, they're seeing, I have a brilliant mind? Thanks. So they're seeing those telescopes, they're looking, don't hate anything. So he's saying he hates his keyboard. If you look towards earlier time, they're saying, oh, it was all coalescent, it was all, sure, that would make sense. If you're looking, if you were in a computer simulation and you were able to grab a telescope and you could see into the past, it would seem like that computer turned on, and that was the Big Bang, Oh, what was before the Big Bang? Well, that was somebody pushing a button to turn on your computer simulation, right? Now, it doesn't negate the fact that your computer simulation could be 14 or 16 billion years old. It doesn't negate that. From our perspective, point of view, it's 16 billion years. To the person or whatever, well, you're Dark Wolf's dad now. You're getting ahead of yourself. He's jumping ahead in the timeline. He wants to know how can we manipulate things. Isn't that interesting? Tool makers, monkeys evolved tool makers, and they all want to, hey, if this is the Matrix, how do I win the lottery? That's what I said I made up a meme. I said, if you, how come I could see 1111 all the time and all these sequential numbers, but I can't win the lottery? Yeah, it isn't fair. So to finish with what I was saying is that, yeah, you kind of get where I was going with it. That from our point of view, you would be looking back at time, but from someone else's point of view, you could speed up or slow down the game. I've played video games where you could just turn a knob all of a sudden, and you could go knock out 15 billion years in a second. That's why in the Bible, they say, in the first day of creation, second day of creation, and people would argue, with me, and they say, and the seventh day, and they say, well, there can't be 7 days of creation. I said, you don't know how long a day is to God. How do you? You don't know. NPCs cannot be the player or the game master. I say they can. I was thinking about that. I'm sharing all my ideas, right? Or am I? So, if I was really brilliant, I might have other ideas that I'm not sharing. come up with those ideas and then get back to me. What do you think I really think? These are the things I share on public videos. So I must be thinking some really deep thoughts that I'm not sharing. Let that bug your mind out. Think about this one, though. Think about who has been Mandela affected the most. Maybe Jim Carrey. Maybe, a couple other actors. That makes sense. Right, think about that for a minute. What about these guys, that have been in movies that are like Mandela Effect movies and have experiences like that? What's going on, with those? If we have NPCs, could we have the opposite? Could we have player characters that are more player characters than you? Let that roll around in your head for a second. Go the other way. You can't just have NPCs and not any real player characters, and then there's maybe middle line ones, and maybe there's autonomous players like you and I. Maybe I'm the real player, and maybe you're all shadow NPCs. So who knows? What I'm saying is that it might be an interesting thing to think about as the conscious ones have been Mandela. Right. I've said that before, that that is to just a Truman Show setup. Correct. The NPCs are asleep. Right. Well, what I'm saying is a lot of people, like I said before, don't have the tools. But I've seen people that have been more self-realized. So I believe you can go from what you're calling an NPC to more of a player. I think there is a evolution to that, but I don't think that it should be done on purpose. I don't believe in red pilling people. So I think that you can, I think that people can evolve to it. But, like in a video game, I've seen it too many times where, like you'd say to somebody, oh gosh, that was so cool. Like you're talking about, you're having a conversation, like making a joke. You'll say something like, oh, Mr. Colonel Mustard in the conservatory with a candlestick, or you make a joke. And then now there's no, then you find out there's no more candlestick in the conservatory in the game Clue. And you're like, that doesn't make sense. And then you go out and you meet somebody and his last name's like Mustard. And you're like, that, what the heck is going on? So it's as if you're in a video game and you're putting out those ideas, and then it kind of sifts through and it reflects back to you. So that's always an interesting thing. If you look at, I don't know if I'm going to talk all night, but if you look at the numbers, and I said this in another video, 1111 is sequential numbers. Let this rattle around in your head for a minute too. How could I see 1111 and you see 1111 in your reality? How could I see something like that, and how can you see something like that? Like, unless we were in a type of a holographic reality, like, how could you see numbers? How could you get up in the middle of the night and see it was 3:33 a.m.? And how could I do that? Totally separate. Like, that doesn't, how could that happen? So time and space are definitely, interrelated, but how is that? Unless you're in, let's make it simple. Right, so we're in a, if you look at all of, there's the mind and the supermind. If you look at the, I don't like the word hive. Don't like it. I don't like the word hive mind. Because there's a lot of evil around that. But what I'm saying is there's an aspect to the supermind where I think that in our dreams sometimes we could, the Borg. Yeah, I don't like the Borg. I'm waiting for 7 of Nine's change, her name to change. Right, the supermind. Releasing the ego will allow you to, get more in touch with the supermind or whatever, and then you kind of figure out a lot more things. But what I'm saying is that when you, there's that our supermind, if whatever you want to call it, our supermind got a worm, is what I'm saying. We got a computer virus worm. So that's why you're getting the letters like doubling in words and S's and things. Our collective mind got a worm, which makes sense. Anyway, it's getting a little late here. I was going to talk for 10 minutes. I went to 46 minutes. And family members are home. They're going to say, you're talking to strangers on the air. But thanks so much for tuning in. Comment if you want on something. You can always message. I always talk. Thanks for tuning in. Hope it didn't sound too stupid. Like, subscribe, share. And don't lose faith. I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel. But are we supposed to go towards the light? Or is that light a mind eraser and then you end back in the matrix? That's what you should be really asking yourself. So I'll leave you